Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. The pan hit the floor before Marcus understood why. 7 figures in black plating filled his kitchen doorway, weapons leveled at his chest, and somewhere behind them, a shape ducked under his doorframe that shouldn't have fit through it at all. He still had the spatula in his hand. Sauce dripped off the tip and onto the linoleum, and for one absurd second, that was the only thing he could think about, the mess, and how he'd have to clean it before the meatballs burned. "Where," said the tall one, in a voice that made his molars ache, "are my daughters?" He didn't know yet that this question would end, 6 months later, with him standing in front of a council of alien delegates, watching a woman who used to burn planets try to hold a room with nothing but words. He only knew that 2 women he'd been feeding for 3 months were asleep 20 feet away, and that whatever was in front of him had come a very long way to find them. "Living room," he managed. They had a long day. 3 months earlier, something had come down through his back fence at 2 in the morning, taking the oak tree, half the mailbox, and most of his tomato plants with it. He'd found 2 women in strange grey flight suits, half buried in the wreckage, one bleeding from a gash along her scalp, both of them furious in a language he didn't recognize until it started, unmistakably, sliding into English between curses. He hadn't called anyone. He wasn't sure who you'd call. He learned their names before he learned what they were. Naria didn't stop talking even while he cleaned the cut on her sister's head. She narrated everything, complaints about navigation systems, insults aimed at a solar flare like it owed her money. Livia said less and watched more, cataloguing his kitchen, his tools, the particular way he moved around an injured stranger without asking permission first. It took him 4 days to understand they weren't tourists. It took 3 months for him to stop caring. They told him about the Empire in pieces, the way people tell you about a hard childhood sideways between other subjects. 43 systems, fleets, a mother who had turned 3 planets to glass and never once, as far as either daughter could remember, taken a day for herself. Marcus had pictured someone hollow-eyed and grim. He had not pictured 6 arms and a voice that could stop a heartbeat, standing in his kitchen with sauce on the floor between them. "They're not hurt," he said again, louder, hands out and empty. "They've been resting. Bad landing, that's all, a controlled one, they'd want me to say." The Queen's eyes, there were more than 2, and they all moved separately, which was doing nothing for his nerves, swept the room. Soft chairs. A stack of dishes drying by the sink. No restraints, no cages, nothing that looked like a prison in any language. "Stand down," she said finally, to the room, not to him. Weapons lowered half an inch. "Take me to them." He led her past the hallway pictures, past the coat hooks, into the living room where 2 women who had personally led sieges lay, curled under a quilt his grandmother had made, hair gone slightly gold from 3 months of actual sun. Neri awoke first, blinking up at 7 armed strangers, and her mother's face gone the color of a held breath. "Mom," she sat up too fast, tangled in the blanket. "Why do you have the death squad?" "You have been missing," the Queen said, and something cracked in the word, "for 3 months. I searched 47 systems for your bodies." The sisters looked at each other with the specific guilt of children who know exactly which lie is about to unravel. It came out fast once it started. The reports they'd sent, filed through Earth's networks instead of encrypted channels because it had seemed easier at the time. Reports that had gone nowhere, that had never once reached her. "You let me believe you were dead," the Queen said, "so you could learn to make hot chocolate." "When you say it like that, it sounds bad," Livia offered. Marcus, hovering in the doorway with a dish towel he didn't remember picking up, said the only thing that felt true. "Dinner's almost ready, if anyone still wants it. It's just spaghetti. I made extra." Nobody laughed. But nobody said no either, and 40 minutes later, the most feared ruler in 3 sectors was sitting at his kitchen table, armor still on, working a fork through pasta, while 11 soldiers tried to figure out whether their helmets came off for dinner. It was somewhere around the 2nd cup of coffee that the real conversation started. Marcus asked how she liked the work, running an empire, all that, the way he'd ask anyone about their job, and watched a woman who commanded fleets go completely still, like the question had no shape she recognized. "It is demanding," she said, like the word was a wall she was standing behind. "Sure, but you get days off, things you do just because you like them. Rulers do not rest." "Everyone rests," Marcus said gently, "even if it's just 20 minutes with something you're proud of." She mentioned, almost against her will, that she collected old weapons. He told her about the dresser he'd hauled out of a stranger's garage last spring for $11 and refinished by hand, not because he needed it, but because it had been beautiful once and somebody had stopped seeing that. Naria had to explain the concept of a garage sale to her sister. Sergeant Cale asked, in genuine confusion, why anyone would give away something valuable for so little, and Marcus said the only answer he had, because it wasn't valuable to them anymore, and it might be to someone else. It was Naria who finally said the thing that had been sitting under the whole meal like a live wire. "What if serving the Empire isn't the only thing that matters, Mom?" The Queen's mandibles clicked shut. "The Empire is everything. It is our strength, our legacy." "When did you last laugh?" Livia cut in quiet, not cruel. "Not the sound you make in interrogations, an actual laugh." Her mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus watched something in her face go from armored to simply lost. "I don't know how," the Queen said at last, and it came out smaller than anything Marcus had heard from her yet. Nobody at that table moved. She stayed 9 days after that. On the last morning, over coffee on the porch, she asked Marcus, flatly and without warning, whether he'd consider advising her, not on weapons, on the other thing, how you hold power without a fist closed around it. He said yes, before he'd finished being afraid of the question. Half a year later, the changes she'd started on that porch had a name, a voluntary compact offering member worlds real autonomy in exchange for cooperation. Nothing forced, nothing seized. 3 worlds signed in the first month. By the fourth, 23 had, and the council chamber on Velta Prime was packed tighter than it had been in a generation, every seat filled with delegates who'd come to watch a tyrant either fumble or fold. Marcus stood at the back in a borrowed jacket that didn't sit right on his shoulders, watching Zelindra take the floor without a single guard behind her. That detail alone had made the room go quiet before she'd said a word. "For most of my reign," she began, "loyalty in this chamber was a number, fleets pledged, worlds seized. I built an empire the way you build a wall, one stone forced against the next until nothing could get through." She let that sit. "I am done building walls." A delegate near the front, Corinthian Warsguard, one of the species she'd personally subdued a decade earlier, rose without waiting to be recognized. "You ask us to trust a compact with no enforcement clause, no penalty for worlds that take your autonomy and give nothing back. Explain to me why that isn't simply weakness wearing a new uniform." The room turned toward her as one. Marcus felt his own pulse pick up on her behalf. "Because I have already run the experiment," Zelindra said, and her voice didn't rise, which made it worse for everyone listening. "For 3 months I believed my own daughters were dead, killed on some worthless border world, because that was the only shape loyalty had ever taken for me: silence, obedience, control tight enough that nothing could slip through it. And when I finally found them, do you know what I found instead? 2 soldiers who had learned, on a planet with no armies and no empire at all, to help a neighbor shovel snow for no reason, but that it needed doing. They were not weaker for it. They were the first happy thing I had seen in my own family in 20 years. Her hands, Marcus noticed, weren't shaking. They were open, palms up, empty, a gesture her guards would once have called suicidal in a room like this. "You want a penalty clause," she went on, "because you have only ever been ruled by fear, and fear needs teeth to mean anything. I'm not asking you to trust an absence of teeth. I'm asking you to trust that a people given something worth keeping will keep it without being made to. If I am wrong, this compact fails and I answer for it. If I am right, we have found something stronger than every fleet I ever commanded." The Corinthian ambassador didn't sit down right away. Nobody moved to fill the silence for him. When he finally spoke again, it was quieter. And if your own worlds test that theory and fail, then I will have learned something conquest never taught me, Zelindra said. How to lose without breaking anyone to prevent it. It wasn't applause that answered her, not at first, just the low sound of several hundred beings deciding, individually, whether to believe her. But 3 more worlds filed their intent to join before the session closed that night, and Marcus, watching from the back, understood he was looking at the strongest thing she'd ever built, and the only one that hadn't cost anyone a planet. That night, in what used to be a war room, and was now, absurdly, a garden, Marcus found a package waiting on the bench where he liked to sit, a small carved box, and inside it, a wooden spoon, hand-turned, scorched faintly along one edge exactly where his old one had burned. No note. He didn't need one. He set it on the shelf by the window, where the light would catch it every morning, and went inside to see what the princesses had ruined in his kitchen this time.